From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosa Bianco. What's going on today, Lou?
Matthew, I'm a bit conflicted. I want to introduce our next guest, but his resume is so long, it would take me the podcast to introduce all his exploits. So I think the best way to introduce Steve Shwartz is to let him do it himself. So Steve, thank you for gracing us with your presence and your knowledge, and welcome to the Liquid Lunch Project, my friend.
Hey, Matt, Luigi, great to meet you both, and thanks for having me on your program.
Glad you're here. So, Steve, you got a very interesting background. You're the author of Evil Robots, Killer Computers, and Other Myths, the truth about the future of humanity with AI. But besides that, you've been an angel investor for over 21 years. And, a lot of our audience is starting businesses, running businesses. They're always looking for investors, right? So I'm sure you can provide a wealth of knowledge to them. But before we jump in there, why don't we start with, where did you get started in your career as an entrepreneur to where you are today?
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I started my career in artificial intelligence way back in 1979 when I moved to Connecticut to do postdoctoral research at Yale University with Roger Schenck, who was one of the pioneers of AI. Then came several AI startups, one of which made a public offering, and another became one of the leading business intelligence products of the 1990s. Then came a number of other startups, some non-AI, as both an investor and an entrepreneur. Tango ended up as the fifth best IPO of 2011. And my most recent company, Device 42, doubled or tripled revenues every year from its founding in 2012 to its sale to a private equity firm in 2019. And then after Device 42, I wrote a book on AI that you just mentioned. And the book explains why AI will never take over the world. It'll never take all our jobs. And it explains why we won't see self-driving cars dominating our roads anytime soon, and a number of other related topics.
So you mean we don't have to worry about the killer computers?
We absolutely don't have to worry. There's nothing to worry about.
That's a breath of fresh air, because in the media, all you see is the gloom and doom coming, how computers will be taking jobs, and in no time soon, this country will be out of business. So I'm glad to finally hear that.
Yeah. So, I can explain why I'm pretty sure that's the case. So AI has made great strides from an engineering perspective. Siri answers our questions. Google Translate helps us talk to taxi drivers in foreign countries. Our smartphones automatically identify the faces in our photos. Self-driving cars may be on the horizon. That's all AI. And that progress naturally leads people to wonder where it will all end. Will AI robots get so smart that they try to exterminate us or turn us into pets? Let me just briefly explain how the main types of AI work. Suppose you want to build an AI program to diagnose a particular disease. You'd create a table of data in which each row represents one person. Half the rows are people who had the disease, and half the rows don't have the disease. And then the row for each person contains features from their medical record that are important, like their age, whether the person smokes, and so on. And then you feed that table of data into an AI algorithm that learns a function that can predict whether that person has the disease based on their medical record. And now it can do it for people who weren't in that training table. But the function that it learns is just a formula. So you probably remember learning formulas like the one that's used to convert centigrade temperatures into Fahrenheit. You multiply centigrade by 9/5 and add 32 degrees. That's a function or a formula. But is there any intelligence in that function? I think everybody would agree, absolutely not. And what I'm telling you is there's no more intelligence in a function that recognizes faces or the function that translates languages than there is in the function that computes Fahrenheit temperatures. And that's why we don't have to worry about any of these things.
That's interesting. With that being said, what about machine learning, where it's able to learn from the formulas before? I think that is where a lot of people started to get paranoid because they were learning faster than we could input the data, and they were learning from the data that was inputted.
Exactly. So what I just described was machine learning. So you take that table of data that has one row for each person, whether or not they had the disease, and you feed that into a machine learning algorithm, and it learns, quote unquote, learns a function. It actually computes the function, but learning sounds a lot better, so that's the term that's used. But it learns that function, and then it can apply that function. But that's all it can do. It can't. It has no idea what people are. It doesn't know that people eat food or sleep in beds. It doesn't know anything about diseases. All it can do is now take a medical record for a person, look at whether they smoke or whether they the other aspects of the medical record, and determine whether it thinks they have the disease. But it's just applying a formula, just like converting centigrade into Fahrenheit.
So you've been in the AI space for before most people even knew it existed, right? Obviously, with computers and everything growing by leaps and bounds, when do you actually see? I know there's AI right now, but when do you actually see it becoming more integrated into society than it is right now? How far away from that?
Well, I think we're seeing AI is permeating society in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of AI on our smartphones. When we take a picture of our friends and it says, okay, yeah, this is Bill, this is Mary, this is George, that's AI. It's applying a function that can recognize and label faces. When you go to use Google Translate in a foreign country and you have a taxi driver speak into it and it translates what the taxi driver said, that's AI. And you see AI being applied in almost every area of business, of government. You look at medicine, AI is being applied, I would guess, 150 different areas of medicine at least. There's almost nowhere where it's not being applied. We're using it to detect terrorists at airports, for good or for bad, because there's some discrimination there in the way it does it. But it's really being integrated all over in society.
So when you got started in angel investing, right, what brought you into, I guess, well, for lack of a better word, one of the riskiest type of investing you could possibly do, but also has one of the best returns available out there if you can stay the course? Because, in the angel investing market, you probably got to go into 100 deals and maybe 2 of them will work out, but hopefully those 2 pay off, the other 98 that didn't come through.
Absolutely. Yeah. You really need, if you look at any portfolio of 10 or say 10 deals, maybe six of them will go south completely. You won't get any return. And then maybe 3 more will give you your money back for the rest of the 10. And then you're relying on that one deal to give you all your return. So in my own portfolio, I had one unicorn where, we grew Tango from nothing to, $250 million company. It was the 5th best IPO of 2011. So, I could angel invest for the next 3 centuries and I'd have a positive return because of that one company. But by the same token, I've had a lot of big losers, both ones that I've invested in and actually companies I've started.
Losing is definitely part of the game, right? It's about having those winners and outpace the losers, right? That one unicorn that you can find.
Absolutely.
Hey, Steve, help both myself and the audience grasp a couple of fundamental precepts here, right? So if I were to take a lever or a fulcrum and lift a large rock, that lever is merely exaggerating my strength, right? It's the application of my strength.
Absolutely.
So where do you draw the line, or where can you help our audience understand where does artificial intelligence start And where does the application of a human inventor or a human engineer end?
Yeah, great question. So let's go back to that medical diagnosis example. So you could take human doctors or medical researchers, and they could plow through, maybe there's 100 million records, patient records that they plow through, and they can start tabulating and making calculations, and they might eventually figure out the right function to diagnose that disease. But it takes forever. What AI does for them is, in a few seconds or minutes or not very long in any case, it computes that function by, blowing through all those records really quickly and figuring out what that function is. So that's the main thing it does for you. And you can apply that in a lot of different areas. So it's, in most cases, it's not so much that it does things that couldn't be done by a human. It just does them so much faster that that's where its value is. And then if you look at areas like computer vision, like the ability to label photos in our smartphone, to say that, yeah, that's a picture of Luigi. That's something that you can really only do with AI, because the function is so complex to do that humans would have a very hard time figuring it out by hand. And in fact, that's what they used to do in computer vision. They used to try to figure out the function by hand.
Now, Steve, you have such a wonderful way of making something so complex understandable to us humans.
Thank you.
You ever consider writing a book?
That's why I wrote the book. I actually wrote my book. There were several events that happened that caused me to want to write the book. I don't know if you remember back in, I think it was 2010 maybe, IBM had a computer that played Jeopardy against two Jeopardy champions.
Oh, how can I forget that? I'm a big Jeopardy fan.
Was it Watson? Was it IBM's Watson?
IBM's Watson, and it kicked their butt. And being a nerd, I was clapping. I just thought that was great. But I kind of knew, I had a pretty good idea of how it worked under the hood, and I knew there was no real intelligence there. But then IBM took that victory and started branding their whole business around Watson. Watson can, think like a person, and that disturbed me. Then Microsoft came out with a program that they said read better than humans, and while what they said was somewhat factual, it was completely untrue. And then Elon Musk is saying, you hear him saying that AI is humanity's biggest existential concern because of the fear of killer robots and computers taking over the world. And that's just wrong. So I was having dinner one night with Roger Schank, the AI pioneer who I came to Yale to work with all those years ago. And he said, why don't you write a book? So I did.
How was that process, writing the book? I'm sure you've written a lot of papers and you've written a lot of, protocols and other stuff, but the process of writing the book from everybody that we speak to is a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, it was my first book in 35 years. I'd written an AI book back in the mid 80s, but this one was a little more challenging because I had to do a lot of catch up in the field. So I ended up, reading thousands and thousands of articles and taking notes and, to make sure I was really familiar with all the research in the field. And then I constructed my arguments. And the first version of the book was too technical. I gave it to my daughters to read, who I knew would be my most honest critics. And they said, Dad, do you expect anybody outside the field to read this? I said, yeah, it's a mainstream book. And they said, well, I don't know. So I hired a writing coach who said, you know what, you got to start from scratch. And, she helped me, bring it up to a mainstream level. it was an interesting process.
You see, Steve, you have your daughters. I have Matthew. Whenever I get too highfalutin and academic, he tells me every eighth or ninth word, just drop in an F-bomb, and everybody understands.
So, Steve, you spent a lot of your career on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
And angel investing on the East Coast is not as popular as it is on the West Coast, especially the Silicon Valley area, right? So when you first started, you must have been one of the only angels, not only, I'm sure there was a handful, but it wasn't very big up in the tri-state area, let's say.
Yeah, what's happened in the investing community is when I was raising money for my startups in the 80s and 90s, you went straight to venture capitalists, and they would invest, $500,000 on $1 million pre-money valuation. It's very hard to find those anymore, although there are some that are starting to turn up now that do come down to that level. But most of the venture capitalists went up market, and you need $5 million in revenue, before you can play. And I think angel investors really filled that gap from starting in around the late 90s to now. But angel investing is a lot more prevalent than you'd think. There are angel investor groups in almost every major city. New York City probably has, must have 10 or 15 angel investor groups, including New York Angels, which is, I think we're maybe the fourth largest in the world in terms of dollars invested. So it is fairly prevalent today, and the venture capital was more prevalent in Silicon Valley. It became very popular, both venture and angel investing, in New York City, in Silicon Alley. That started maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But New York is pretty popular right now for both angels and VCs.
So these days, what is the average size check an angel is used to writing per deal? What would you say?
The typical process in an angel group is that each angel invests individually, and typically each angel will write a check for $25,000 or $50,000. So if there are deals, well, for example, when I raised money for Device 42, we raised over $1 million that way. At New York Angels, there are a lot of deals where companies will raise between $500,000 and $1.5 million. And then there are other deals where there might not be as many investors and you raise less, and then they have to syndicate it with other angel groups or other small VCs to raise the additional money.
Yeah. So generally, when you guys invest, do you invest as a syndicate, or is each person on the cap table of the company?
Each person is on the cap table with an exception. So a lot of funds, New York Angels and the Angel Investor Forum here in Connecticut, have sidecar funds. So at New York Angels, if you get enough investors, then there's a fund that will kick in another $150,000. So each angel is on the cap table, and then that sidecar fund is on the cap table.
And when you guys go into deals, we always hear, and you see in the movies, and it's a saying, we bet on the jockey and not the horse, right?
Yeah.
Is that a true statement in your world?
Oh my God. It's something when I periodically talk about angel investing, and I always say, number one is the jockey. At Tango, which was my one big winner, the jockey was a CEO who had previously created a $50 million company. And it was somebody who, you could tell you were never going to leave the room without writing a check. It just wasn't going to happen. And then I've invested so many times in great technology, especially AI technology, where great idea, great technology, but no jockey. And a lot of those companies are history.
We had a conversation with somebody just the other day on our podcast, and space exploration company, right? And my comment to him was, it's a fantastic idea, right? but you don't always have to be first to market. You got to go when the market's ready, right? Are you a believer in that as well? Or
Absolutely. Timing is everything.
if you look at some of this, look, Facebook's the largest social media company in the world, right? But they weren't the first. They were probably
Right.
the 15th, right?
Right.
They just built a better mousetrap that was a little bit more user friendly.
Yep.
And then they hired the right people and the right team around it, right?
They did.
So
did.
as an angel investor, do you guys ask for usually pro rata rights when you're moving forward on deals? And are they generally accepted these days? I know they used to be back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, so typically you either invest in debt or equity. So if you're in debt, if you're investing in preferred equity, you get terms like drag along rights and pro rata and liquidation preferences and and all those things. The same kind of terms that venture capitalists get. But there's a trend. Those are fairly complicated and expensive documents. So a lot of companies raise convertible notes where it's a fairly simple document. You take a debt position in the company with a 20% discount, for example, to the next round. And then there's a cap that in effect implements a pre-money valuation. So, maybe you'll say the cap is $5 million, which means that if the pre-money valuation of the next round is $10 million, you get a 50% discount into the next round.
Can you break that down and explain it for the audience? Because there's a lot of, we help small businesses get access to credit and capital all the time. And I don't think a lot of them have heard of convertible notes before. Can you break it down in a more simplistic aspect to where they would understand it, right?
Sure. The basic idea is that I lend you money, and what I get in return, sometimes I'll get an interest rate and sometimes not, depending on the type of note. But the main thing I get in return is a discount to the next round of financing. When they raise their Series A round of financing or their first round of financing, the money that I lent you gets converted into preferred stock in the same with the same terms as the new investors in that Series A, except that I get a discount. It might be 20%, it might be 50%, it might be more, depending on the valuation cap.
So that's one trend that you're seeing right now, right? Is convertible notes. What other trends are you seeing in that space right now? With the market being the way it's been for the last 7 years, 8 years, it's been on fire. Do you see any down rounds coming in the near future with some of these companies?
I have no doubt. In fact, I'm having a hard time making investments right now because the valuations are just sky high. I mean, it used to be, that a company with no revenues, but they've developed a great product and have a great idea, and the product market fit seems to make sense. They'll have a valuation of $2 or $3 million, a pre-money valuation of $2 or $3 million. So, if you put in $1 million on a $3 million valuation, you're basically buying a third of the company. Today, that same company is getting $5 million, $7 million. The ones coming out of the well-known incubators like Y Combinator, they're coming out with like 13 million, 15 million, no customers, no revenue. To me, that's insane. And, I think you're going to see a lot of down rounds as a result, because what happens, and I've experienced this myself, if you raise money at too high a valuation, so, let's say you raise money at a pre-money of $8 million and a post-money of $10 million. You raise, say, $2 million. Now, the next round has to be higher than $10 million. So you want to be able to get a valuation of $20 million, but now you've got to have, revenues of $5-6 million to get to that 20 million. But that's kind of, a lot of times that's hard for that startup to go from zero to that 5 or 6 million in less than 3 or 4 years. So in between, they're going to need financing, and very often that's a down round.
Down round or some type of bridge, right?
Or some type of, a lot of times it's, a lot of times it's same terms as the early round, and only the original investors participate to protect their interest. Yeah.
Now, in your opinion, is that a reason why companies are not going public as fast as they used to? Because you have companies, getting to monstrous valuations before they're even public.
Right. I mean, it certainly takes away a lot of the need to access the public markets. I mean, my first company, which went public in 1986, we had a post-money valuation of $24 million.
Wow.
$24 million. Today, you get a lot of unicorns with IPOs, and private companies are getting valuations in the tens of billions of dollars pre-IPO.
It's also, when you have angels in there, you have VCs in there. A lot of these VCs that are in the A series, they sell off in the C and D series, right? Before they go public too. Yep. So they're in and out. And by that time, if they are a unicorn, the public already knows about them. Chances are they're using their products. But when they actually go public, the public runs in and buys it, and they're the ones caught holding the bag at the end of the day. And that's what I've seen happen over the last 7 or 8 years.
Just investing in general, whether it's in IPOs or anything else, I never, except for angel investments, I never pick stocks myself, because I tell my friends, who are dentists and things, who think they know everything, I say to them, look.
Wait, a doctor know everything? What do you mean?
Right, you think that's a great investment, whether you're buying or selling. It's exactly the right time. But the person you're trading with is a pro, and they have all this research behind them, and that's why they're buying or selling. And they're on the other end of that trade with you. Who do you think knows more? And with the 100%. IPOs, you don't really know anything. I'm not one to talk because I'm an angel investor, although we do a fair amount of due diligence before we invest, but it's still pretty risky.
A lot of the trend lately has been actually going in and using SPVs to buy employee stock off the cap table. I've seen before these companies go public. So this way you're not getting an IPO price. You're getting a little bit of a discount beforehand.
Yeah, you see that happening, but a lot of times it's just a way to save the cost of going public. So you've got a company that's essentially already public, and you just use that as a shell and take on and you use that as a source of equity.
Yeah, I mean, especially for employees that actually have been working in these companies and they're seeing all these valuations go and they have some equity, but they've been there 4 or 5 years and they can't tap it yet, right? It's all make-believe until the checks and the money's in the bank. That's what I say, right? Yeah. It looks great, but until that money's in the bank, I don't believe it.
It's tough. And that's, you get that with, as a small company, you want to maybe pay your employees a little bit less, but give them equity. So they have the same motivation you do. And one problem is that a lot of employees don't believe that those stock options are ever going to be worth anything.
Well, because there's a good chance that they worked at 3 or 4 startups before and they've seen this happen, and they want to take some money off the table, which is not necessarily a bad thing when they can, especially in some of these rounds or with these SPVs that are being used right now. Hey, Steve, we really appreciate you being here. We want to be conservative with your time. Can you just tell everybody where they can find your book and how they can get in touch with you if they have questions on angel investing or AI?
Absolutely. So my book is available on Amazon and pretty much anywhere where books are sold. And I have a lot of information about AI on my website, aiperspectives.com. And you can reach me at steve@aiperspectives.com.
Hey, Steve, I really want to send you a heartfelt thank you because I haven't seen my partner get his Wall Street competitive juices flowing this much since last quarter's distribution. I think he's going to press his Brioni suit tonight and walk around the house with that 3-piece pinstripe blue suit.
That's great.
Hey, Steve, I have to ask you. I'm going to take a little page from my partner's book this time, but you, as our audience will soon find out, are a Renaissance man, right? You obviously have you have some technical expertise. You're an investor. You're an avid sportsman. You're a family man. I mean, You do it all. When you wake up in the morning, what gets your competitive juices flowing?
That's a great question. When I was 18, Carole King wrote the song "Beautiful." I don't know if you remember that song. You got to get up every morning with a smile on your face and show the world all the love in your heart.
He sings too. What the?
I don't sing. You don't want to hear me sing.
Hey, Steve, we really appreciate you being there. For everybody listening, go out, get the truth about AI and the failure of humanity. Evil Robots, Killer Computers, and Other Myths by Mr. Steven Shwartz. Steve, there is one question I have for you that I ask every guest on this podcast before we go. And you've been around the block for a while now, and I want to know what success means to Mr. Steven Shwartz.
I think for me, it's as I mentioned, it's being able to enjoy what you do. So most of my career, I've been able to get up with a smile on my face. I got to the point in my career where I didn't really enjoy managing people anymore, so I stopped. And of course, there's a financial component. You need a certain amount of money, so you don't have to worry about money, and that's important too.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate you. Everybody, that's a wrap of another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.